Hey guys! Today I'm making a wine bottle rack using steel rods. Now, making the wine bottle rack using these steel rods involves bending them and brazing them. Now, I have brazed aluminum tubes and copper tubes before, but I've never ever bent or brazed steel rods. So that's going to be a fun experience.
A quick shout out to BernzOmatic for sponsoring this project.
So I'm using 1/4-inch steel rods and I got these from Home Depot, but you could find them in any hardware store or metal supply store. I'm using 1/4-inch rods because I think it is thick enough to make a stable wine holder, but it's also thin enough that it will be easy enough to heat it, because the thicker you get, the more heat you need to get it to the point where it can bend or it can be brazed. So here's what my setup looks like. I have set up on my garage floor because it's made of concrete and you want to be away from anything at all that can be easily flammable. So as you see here, I have these cement blocks that I am using. These are going to be supporting the steel rods and acting as clamps while we bend and braze them. Now, to bend the steel rod or even braze it, you need to get it really hot. And to do that, I'm going to be using the BernzOmatic TS8000. This is a high heat torch, and I will be using that along with the BernzOmatic MAP Pro gas. This gas will allow us to heat the steel rod to a really high temperature, and this is different from the propane that you typically use for wood burning. And then of course you need some heat resistant gloves and safety glasses. Now, to make the wine rack, I am going to be bending a couple of these rods into a zigzag pattern and then joining them with smaller pieces of the steel rod. And we will get to the cutting and the brazing at that point. But first, let's go ahead and bend this up. I measured and marked where I needed to bend and used the cement bricks to support the exact point where I wanted to bend it. I'll be using the corner to bend along it to make the 90-degree bend. To use the BernzOmatic torch, you can simply screw on the torch onto the cylinder. The torch has an ignition switch and a button for a continuous on mode. You can also control the amount of gas using the knob on the side. To bend, I held the torch at the point that needed to be bent until it was bright red. The hottest point in the flame is at the tip of the blue flame, so that is what you need touching the rod. And then I carefully bent it along the corner of the brick to make a 90-degree angle.
That worked out beautifully. I was amazed at how quickly it heated up. I think it was less than a minute, and then it was really easy to turn as well. So we're just gonna let it cool down so that I can easily touch it and measure it again and move it and make the next bend to sort of make that zigzag pattern.
So there's the rod, it's all cooled down, and now I need to bend it that way at 4 inches. And a happy accident is that the width of the brick itself is 4 inches as well. So I can just use the corner to guide it to bend. So we're just gonna support it right there, align the brick, heat it up, and bend it. Then it was just a process of repeating it again and again to make the zigzag that I wanted. I made a total of 4 zigzag rods for the 2 tiers of the wine rack. So now it's time to cut these up, and to cut steel rods, you can use any saw as long as it's fitted with a metal cutting plate. So a circular saw, a reciprocating saw, a miter saw, they will all work. You can also use an angle grinder. I am going to be using a rotary tool fitted with a metal cutting wheel. Let's talk real quick about these brazing rods. These rods are already coated with flux. Now, the flux is extremely important in any brazing application because the flux is what cleans your joint. It removes any oxidation. So when you put the flux, you heat it up, the flux cleans it up, and then you put your brazing material. So since this is already coated, you don't need a separate flux. So when you actually put this in on the hot joint, the flux melts first and coats the joint, and then the brazing rod starts to melt. Once again, I used the cement blocks to support the iron rods in the configuration I wanted to join them. I am using the cement blocks to create a 90-degree angle. Now for brazing, you need to heat up the joint until it is super hot. It's going to get cherry red hot. Once it's hot enough, you can bring the brazing rod to touch the hot metal and then move the flame away from the joint, but still keep it on the metal. This is when the flux melts and coats the joint, and then the brazing rod starts to melt and then coat the joint. The joint pulls in the brazing material into itself because of capillary effect. You can actually see when the joint stops pulling in any more material, and then you can just stop. On a side note, I absolutely love watching a joint cool down. It is just so satisfying. I attached two 5-inch pieces on the two ends of the long zigzag and then decided to add one to the middle as well. So this has cooled down, and now I can go ahead and attach this on the other side. And we do have a problem. If I attach these two ends, this guy is not going to work because it's not perpendicular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach it on these two ends, and then we're going to see if this is going to be stable enough that we might not even need this. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I mean, it's a bit wobbly, but you know, it's not perfect. This here, I don't think we need it because I think it's pretty strong without it. I do want to attach the next level, and I always knew that this was probably going to be a bit challenging because all of these have to be perfectly equal to match up and to work. It seems like it might work, but we're gonna try it out and see. But first I'm going to take that off, just going to heat it up and take that off, and then try and attach this. And then I went ahead and attached the smaller zigzags to the side. Again, remember that the flame is not melting the brazing rod. You just want to keep the flame next to the joint so that the iron remains hot. It is done. I am going to let it cool down for a bit. It seems pretty strong, but we're gonna let it cool down, and then I'm gonna test it out with wine bottles to see if it can take its weight, because that's really what it's supposed to do. So here it is. It is actually pretty strong. I am quite impressed by how strong it is. It is not perfect. There is a little bit of wobble, which is basically due to one of these being misaligned, but that's okay. Let's try it out with some wine bottles. So I've got a big bottle and a regular size bottle. So let's try the big bottle. I'm pretty sure the big one won't fit in the bottom. Oh, it does. No, it doesn't. But it will work on the top. And then the regular size bottle can just go in there and it works. So I'm just gonna go ahead, clean it up, prime it, paint it, and we are going to be done. To prep for painting, I cleaned the entire thing with acetone to remove any residues or greases. And then I just went ahead and applied a spray primer meant specifically for metal, followed by my favorite gold paint. And here it is. I am so stoked with how it turned out. Working with metal and torches might seem intimidating, but trust me, you can totally do it. I have a whole bunch of beginner-friendly projects using BernzOmatic torches, ranging from wood burning to metal brazing, so be sure to check those out. And I will see you next time.